Hi, mathematicians. Today you will need your Volume 2 math book. You will also need your additional practice book. All right. And today we are going to practice and learn about how to measure lengths and then use something called a line plot to show the data. Okay, so we will watch a quick little video that explains it, and then we will get to practicing, and then I will send you off on your own. All right, here we go.
How can you measure lengths and use line plots to show the data? Think about this question during the lesson. Julio is measuring some lengths of yarn. How can he use a ruler to measure to the nearest ½ inch? The distance between each whole number on this ruler is 1 inch. Each red mark shows 1/2 inch. So you can think of each whole inch as 2 1/2 inches.
That's like our fractions that we just talked about. So 1/2 plus another half equals a whole.
Line up one end of the object with 0. The 5th 1/2 inch mark is closest to the right end of the yarn. So, to the nearest ½ inch, the yarn measures 5/2 inches. What is another way to write 5/2 inches? Select your answer.
All right, so they have it like we practice with our fractions, okay? But we know in between each number, so in between the 0 and the 1 is a half, right? And then we've got 1 whole, and then we've got 1 1/2, and then 2 wholes, and then 2 1/2. So 5/2 is the same as 2 1/2.
This is 2 whole inches and 1/2 inch. You can write this as 2 1/2 inches. Julio measured 9 other lengths of yarn. The lengths of all the yarn Julio measured are shown below.
All right, so with all of these measurements, now let's see, how would we plot that on a line plot?
Follow these steps to make a line plot. Draw a number line. Show a scale based on the data. Write a title for the line plot. Mark a dot for each data value. You have used number lines to show fractions. A line plot is a way to organize data on a number line.
All right, so before we practice in our book, let's just kind of stop and think about this. So they came up with their title, they drew their line plot, they started their line plot with the smallest measurement or number, okay? And then they ended it with the largest measurement or number, the longest measurement. Then they went through and put a dot to represent each measurement. Here is something that is very important. So come in close so I can tell you. You must always have the same number of dots as you do measurements. So let's double check and make sure that this line plot is correct. So this friend measured yarn, and they measured how many pieces? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They measured 10 pieces of yarn. So on the line plot, they must, and you must have that same number. So they have to have 10 dots to represent those 10 measurements. Let's make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Here's one question and something else I want to point out before we move on to practicing together. If I asked you this question, I want you to think about this for a minute. What was the longest measurement of yarn? What was the longest measurement? Now, some of you might be looking here at your line plot and you might be saying, oh, 3.5 has the longest. Well, yes, it does have the longest if we're looking at the dots, at the data points, but that was not the question. And I'm telling you this because tomorrow there's going to be on your little quiz questions that are going to trick you like this. So even though the data points are the longest measurement would be what? 4 inches, right? So don't get tricked on that. Now, if I ask you this question, which length had the most measurements? That's when we would look at this tall one right here. So 3.5 was the most, the most measurements for the yarn. They had 1, 2, 3, 4. They had 4 pieces of yarn that were 3.5 inches long. But the longest measurement of yarn was 4. Okay, and we'll review that again tomorrow, but just kind of keep that in your memory bank. All right. So now I would like you to make sure that you have your volume 2 math book. And while I am sharing my screen with you, I would like you to turn to page 459. 459. And remember, I always have to do this 2 times. Lucky number 2. All right, so you should have been able to find page 459 in your math book. We're going to start with number 5, all right? So they have pieces of yarn, and we are going to measure them, okay? So if we look at the first length of yarn, let's see what it wants us, how it wants us to measure it. Measure the lengths of the pieces of yarn at the right to the nearest ½ inch. Write the lengths for each piece. I like to start by counting how many I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in my brain, I know I need to have 6 dots on my line plot. But first, I need to get 6 measurements. So I'm going to number 1 through 6 so I know which each string represents. So if we look at string number 1, it is pretty close to the 3. So that would be 3 inches. Okay? If we look at string number 2, oh, look where that one is. It's kind of in between. It's not quite at 3, but it's longer than 2. So if you remember, each of these halfway marks equals a half. So this would be 2.5, right? This is 2.5 inches. Okay, let's look at string number 3. Oh, string number 3 is the same as string number 1. 3 inches, right? Go ahead and see if you can figure out string number 4. We go across, what would that be considered? Looks like it's right here in between the 3 and the 4. So in between the 3 and the 4 is considered what? 3.5 inches, right? All right, now let's look at string number 5. String number 5 looks like it's about right here. Not quite at 2.5, so we're going to say that's 2 inches. And then if we look at our last string, it's a little bit longer than string number 5. And it's right at 2.5. All right, so we got our data points. Now we need to figure out how we're going to graph that. But let's look at number 6. Draw a line to represent another length of yarn. Oh, so they want us to actually add one more. Measure your line to the nearest ½ inch. I want to make this one really long. What do you think we could draw to what number would make it the longest? What number? So if we started at our 0, we would draw it all the way to 4. And that one would be 4 inches. Forgot to write inches here. All right, so now our brain is saying 7, 7. Our line plot has to have 7 dots now, not 6. Now, the fun part, make a line plot to show the measurements of yarn. All right, well, the first thing we need to do is make a title, right? Yarn measurements. Then we have to draw our line plot. Now remember, like I told you, we need to start with the smallest measurement. What was the smallest measurement? So we're going to start right here and we're going to end here. What was the smallest measurement? 2 inches, right? So let's go ahead and write 2 inches. Okay, and then what came next? After 2, we did have some 2.5s. So let's go ahead and write that one. 2.5 inches. Then we had some 3 inches. Then we had 3.5 inches. And we would end with the biggest number, which was what? 4 inches. All right, so we came up with our title. We made our line plot. Now we have to graph our data points. Now this is really important. I just go in order. I look at the number, I plot it, and then I cross it off. So first one is 3. You know what I realized is our line plot might go past our title. That's okay. All right, 3 inches. Our next one is what? 2.5. Plot it, cross it off. Our next one is 3 inches. Plot it, cross it off. Our next one is 3.5. Plot it, cross it off. Number 5 was 2. Plot it, cross it off. 2.5. Plot it, cross it off. And then our last one was 4. Plot it, cross it off. So that, my friends, is how you make a line plot, okay? This one's pretty simple. Let's do one more together before I send you off on your own. I would like you to turn over the page and I would like you to look at number 14. Okay? They try to trick us here. So let's read it and think about what they're really asking us. Jessica used 4 of nail A. So when we measure nail A, we can't just count it as 1. We have to count it as how many plots? 4. I'm just going to go ahead and put a little 4 next to my nail A. All right, so that was 4 for nail A. How many for nail B? We have to make sure we have how many? 2 plots. And 3 of nail C. She used that many nails to build a birdhouse. Measure each nail to the nearest ½ inch, just like we did, then complete the line plot. All right, so if we measure nail A, we know it's in between the 1 and the 2. What is that considered? What's that measurement? That's 1.5 inches. But when we plot that, we're not just going to put 1. How many are we going to put? We have to put 4. Do it with me. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we know we did that one. All right, so nail B, let's see. Nail B is pretty close to what? It's pretty close to 1 inch, right? All right, stop. How many do we have to put? How many dots do we have to put on our line plot for 1 inch? We have to put 2. So find 1 inch, and we're going to make 2 dots. All right, I want you to see if you can measure nail C real quick. Write down what you think the measurement is. Okay, if you line it up, it's pretty close to what? It's pretty close to 2 inches. So now I want you to go ahead and plot nail C. Let's see if you're going to get tricked. How many dots are you going to use for nail C, friends? You should have done how many? You should have done 3 on top of what? 2 inches. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then you cross it off after you plot it. So then here's my quick question before I send you off on your own. What measurement had the most nails? What measurement had the most nails? Well, if you look at your plot, this is where you can look to see which one is the longest. The longest is going to show you the most, right? So then the shortest would show you the least, right? Now here's the last question. What was the longest nail used? What was the longest nail used? Well, that means the biggest number, not how many are plotted, friends. The biggest number. And the longest nail used was 2 inches. Okay, just keep that in your mind because there will be questions like that tomorrow on your quiz. All right, sorry, I feel like I've been talking to you forever. On to your own work. You are in your additional practice book and you are turning to page 149. Okay, 149, and you are going to do question number 1, 2, 3, and flip that bad boy over, and you are going to do number 9. Number 9 is similar to that nail question. Pay attention to the number of vehicles they are talking about. Okay, guys? I am not going to have any discussion posts today because it's kind of hard to do a discussion post with a line plot. So make sure mom and dad are checking your work because, again, you will have a quiz tomorrow on this. All right, great job. See you tomorrow. Bye.